Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain an action fantasy movie called The Princess. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. A medieval kingdom faces the challenge of succession when the king and queen have no male heirs. So, their eldest daughter, the princess, wants to defy the contemporary rules by proving herself to be a valiant leader. She trains hand-to-hand combat as well as weaponry with the castle's master-at-arms, Lynn. The princess also learns philosophy and politics to become a good ruler. The Orthodox king, however, wants his daughter to fulfill more traditional roles, like being a good wife and mother. He desperately wants a male leader sitting on the throne after him. To accomplish this, he sets up the princess's marriage with Julius, the only son of a prominent royal diplomat. Everything appears to be sorted as Julius, who is an extremely ruthless warrior, is set to become king after the betrothal. But on the day of the ring-wearing ceremony, the princess rejects the marriage. 2 days later, she wakes up in a room and immediately feels like her head is about to burst. She finds herself clad in a wedding dress while her hands are chained. It is then that her brain begins to flood with hazy memories of the previous night. A few armed men had barged into this room and forced a strange sedative liquid down her throat. After quickly gathering her wits, the princess begins searching for ways to escape. The nearby window is completely open, but it only leads to a sharp drop into the sea below. She is about to check the door when suddenly she hears the sound of people approaching the room. The princess rushes back to her bed and pretends to be asleep. Seconds later, two big and rough-looking men enter the room with ill intent. One of them creepily brings his face closer to hers, and suddenly she opens her eyes and headbutts him.
Looky, what do we have now?
In a quick flurry of activity, the princess leaps up from her bed and frees one of her hands from the chain by dislocating her thumb. She then uses the chain as a weapon and whips the face of one of the men with it. The princess keeps up her attack by stabbing the eye of the attacker with her hairpin. She has now successfully killed one of the two men who had entered the room. The other lunges in, desperately trying to grab the princess as quickly as possible. However, she maneuvers him towards the window and eventually kicks him down the tower. But before the princess can even compose herself, she hears another set of footsteps inching towards the room. She immediately grabs a heavy hammer placed nearby and hides behind the door. As soon as it opens, she slams it on the thug who was here to check on his friends. She finally unlocks her shackles and arranges the dead bodies of the soldiers to make it look like they are vigilant. Following this, the princess flees to the nearest bathroom and looks out of the window to assess the situation. She sees a frightening sight. Her family have been chained in the courtyard below. Julius soon approaches them, along with his loyal guard and consort, Moira. The king uses this opportunity to reason that Julius's father was a diplomat who would disapprove of his violent actions, but Julius doesn't care, as he believes his father and the king are weak pacifists. Furthermore, he accuses the king of trampling their traditions and welcoming outsiders instead of conquering them. The king argues that one cannot rule with fear alone, but Julius insists that the people want to see someone strong on the throne. The invader then orders his soldiers to escort the royal family to the dungeons. Several meters up in the nearby tower, the princess watches this happening. She recalls the events that happened 2 days ago, where she had refused to marry Julius. Her actions led to the invasion of her kingdom, and now her parents are under threat too. However, her train of thought is interrupted when a soldier enters the bathroom. She quickly sneaks into a nearby bathtub and submerges herself completely in the water. Thankfully, the soldier is wearing a helmet and doesn't notice the bubbles popping up. After he leaves, the princess gets out of the water, rips her soaked dress, and leaves. She sneaks across hallways, avoiding any enemy soldiers by carefully listening to their footsteps. Everything seems to be going well for her, until a big burly soldier wearing an iron helmet grabs her neck. The princess desperately punches his arm, but her attacks don't even make him flinch. However, she shows her exceptional combat IQ by slamming both hands on his helmet. This makes it ring, and the soldier is in so much pain that he is forced to release her. The princess quickly follows it up with a kick to his dick. More combat IQ, but this doesn't faze the brute at all.
Ha! I have micro penis.
Following this, the enemy grabs her by the neck, but she rams his helmet against the wall to escape. He soon rushes towards her like a raging bull, so the princess climbs the wall and lands on his shoulder. She then twists the helmet, effectively blinding him for the time being. The man tries to slam her against the wall, but the princess takes his helmet and lands safely. She then stabs him with the horns on the helmet before slamming it against his head, finally killing the brute. As she takes a breather from this gruesome fight, the princess gets a flashback. She recalls her teacher Lin, who taught her that being a true warrior means fighting for a good cause. During one of their training sessions, the queen had expressed her dismay. She commented that Lin was supposed to teach the princess etiquette and not to fight like a man. Lin, however, insisted that a lady should learn both manners as well as fighting skills at the same time. Back in the present time, a group of soldiers bring the body of the man who the princess had kicked off from the castle's tower. This makes Julius worried, and he orders his lieutenant Kerr to go check on the princess before heading towards the gate of the castle. Kerr then orders another soldier, a pot-bellied, slow, and unremarkable man, to do the task. Damn. In the meantime, the princess has hidden herself in the tower's knitting room. She rips her bridal gown so that she can move her limbs better. She is nursing her injuries when suddenly 2 soldiers arrive at the spot. A fierce struggle ensues and the princess quickly stabs one of the enemies. Then she rips out the lace from her bridal gown and uses it to bind the other soldier. The fearless young lady takes a crossbow and demands to know what Julius did to her family. When the man questions if she knows how to use the crossbow, she turns back and shoots his comrade in the chest. The man, however, continues to insult the princess, which forces her to shoot an arrow into his skull. With this, the princess grabs the dead soldier's sword and leaves the knitting room. She heads downstairs and soon enters a narrow, secret passageway behind the thick walls of the dining hall. She peeps in through a hole and sees several mercenaries looting whatever treasures they can find. Since most of these men are drunk and busy filling their pockets, the princess easily sneaks into the dining room. She then cautiously goes around them and reaches another secret passage on the other end. We then realize that the princess has reached her bedroom, where she has hidden a special sword. Through a flashback, she recalls her training with Lin, who always repeated one important lesson: to fight with one's heart. Lin's uncle and the king's personal advisor Kai also helped train the princess. He was fully aware that the young royal would one day become a brave and proud warrior. So, he had presented the princess with his family heirloom, a beautiful short sword with an unbreakable edge. Renewed with determination, the princess retrieves her gear from under the bed before returning to the secret passage. She is headed downstairs when suddenly she overhears Julius and Moira talking about wedding preparations. Moira inquires why Julius can't take the throne forcefully. The latter replies that no one can question his ascension to the throne if he does it through the traditional method of marriage, even if the marriage is forced. Burning with jealousy, the consort kisses Julius, and the two begin to make out. The princess, who is behind one of the walls, positions herself to stab Julius through a small hole. However, her plans are foiled when a soldier interrupts them, announcing that the king wants to speak to Julius.
What did I tell you about interrupting my nookie?
Shortly afterwards, the invaders meet the king, who warns Julius that taking the crown will be seen as treason among the general public. Julius, however, stresses that the wedding is not an act of treason. Meanwhile, the princess crawls out from under a vent, finding herself under a knight's suit of armor. She doesn't pay too much attention as she thinks it is purely for decorative purposes. Her guess turns out to be wrong as the knight springs into action and tries to stab. The princess has quick reflexes and dodges his attacks while also managing to land a few hits. Unfortunately for her, the knight's armor is immune to any kind of weapon. The princess comes up with a brilliant idea as she aims her sword into the armor's weak points. She then spills the contents of an oil lamp at him, quickly followed by a candle. The thick metallic armor lights up, cooking the knight inside. In his desperation, the knight jumps off from a nearby window and lands in the courtyard below. Upon seeing this, Moira, who is now fed up with Kerr's incompetence, stabs his throat with the help of her whip. She then takes command of Julius's army and orders her men to thoroughly check every floor of the castle tower. Moments later, the princess begins to get cornered by a sea of men that are now rushing up the castle tower. She rips off her necklace and uses the beads to trip the enemies. The young royal then steps on their shields and rushes away from the spot. Unfortunately, there are simply too many enemies for her to battle on her own. She quickly scans the area and comes up with a plan to exit this difficult situation. The princess leaps out of the nearby window, holding on to a tapestry, and swings herself into a room on the other side of the tower. As she is tending to her wounds, someone enters the room and quickly finds her. Thankfully, it is none other than Lin, the castle's master-at-arms and personal teacher to the princess. Lin tends to the young royal and tells her that her family is in the dungeons. The two of them then head to the basement of the tower, which goes through the kitchen. Unfortunately, there, they are cornered by 3 rowdy and extremely dangerous mercenaries. The princess handles 2 men, while Lin faces the biggest of the 3. The master-at-arms easily knocks her opponent down and then joins the princess to fight against the remaining thugs. The 2 women quickly kill one of the mercenaries, and just as the 3rd man charges at the princess, Moira arrives at the scene. She is a ferocious and merciless fighter who excels at using a specialized whip. Immediately, she lashes her weapon at Lin, who blocks it with her arm. The princess goes to her teacher's aid, but Moira is too fast for the young girl. Facing utter defeat, Lin leads the princess to the sewers while she stays back to hold Moira off. The princess crawls into the sewers and soon comes out into the dungeon where she finds 3 drunk guards.
Is that the princess?
It doesn't take her too much effort or time to dispatch the thugs. The princess easily knocks them down and steals a sword, defeating them all while her family watches with pride. She frees her parents and younger sister Violet, but before they can leave, someone knocks the princess out. Sometime later, the princess wakes up in the guest hall below and sees her family as well as Lin chained up. Julius scolds her for the mess she made, but the princess bites his hand in retaliation. An enraged Julius slaps her and stresses that she was born to be his wife. In a very ominous tone, she tells him that she looks forward to marrying him. She threatens that when they're married, he'll have to sleep with one eye open because she'll be plotting to kill him every day and every night. However, this turns out to be a mistake, as Julius realizes that the princess is uncontrollable. He then chooses to wed Violet instead and orders Moira to kill the princess. Fortunately, the princess kicks a nearby guard's sword and stops Moira in her tracks. Lin takes advantage of this opportunity and runs away into a secret passageway with Violet. In a shocking twist, a soldier then throws the princess out of a window, dropping her into the sea below. As she sinks, the princess recalls her training and the times her strength was questioned. She remembers what Julius intends to do to her little sister and gathers her courage. She then uses a fallen shard to release her hands from their bindings and swims to the surface. Elsewhere, Princess has survived and is now back in the castle. She quickly joins Violet and Lin, and the 3 ladies head to a secret storehouse where they arm themselves for battle. Leaving Violet in the storehouse, the other 2 women head outside to battle Julius's soldiers. Catches Violet. Seeing Violet captured, the princess fights her way toward the hall, where Julius is now forcing a priest to marry him and Violet. Thankfully, Kai, who is now free, tells the guests to escape and interrupts the wedding. Taking this opportunity, the princess fights Moira in an intense and hard battle. The young royal takes several hits, but eventually strangles the formidable opponent using her own whip. With Moira now dead, the princess then rushes inside to face her last, but perhaps greatest enemy, Julius. The 2 launch forward and try to take each other's heads off with their swords. Julius, who is fresh and uninjured, stabs the young royal with a dagger. He then throws her out into the courtyard, where several common folk have gathered. As Julius arrogantly declares his victory, the princess recalls Lin's advice: attack with patience and focus. Just as Julius is busy gloating, the princess swiftly steals his sword and cuts off his head. Julius's head falls to the ground, and the princess finally returns the crown to her father. The movie comes to an end as the king declares her as the heir to the kingdom. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.